It's a CNBC article. This was actually from a couple weeks ago. Didn't get a chance to talk about it at the time, but I wanted to highlight this just in case you individuals weren't aware of this. And I'm sure many of you are aware that a lot of this would be going on. It's government, it's fraud, it's one of those duh type things that nobody should be surprised about, especially after hearing about a lot of the pork that came out of the omnibus bill that was attached to the $600 stimulus check. Interestingly enough, we don't hear much pushback about that pork anymore from either side. Makes you wonder if they're both in on it together. Interesting, right? The $900 billion COVID relief law, signed in December, adds measures to fight criminals trying to steal unemployment benefits. The U.S. lost more than $36 billion in unemployment benefits to improper payments, largely from fraud, since the CARES Act was passed in the spring. The fraud has focused primarily on the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program for the self-employed and gig workers. New requirements may delay benefits, labor advocates fear. Makes you wonder just what the heck a labor advocate does anyway. The U.S. has pumped billions of dollars into the unemployment system since the spring, a magnet for criminals that's led to surging theft and fraud attacks. This has contributed to at least $36 billion being taken from out-of-work Americans. Now, the federal government and states are clamping down. $36 billion later, huh? That's all it takes is that $36 billion drop in the bucket for them to clamp down. Way to stick it to them. The $900 billion COVID relief package, signed last month, had steps for workers to prove their eligibility for benefits. But those rules may slow aid to those who need the money, according to labor officials and worker advocates. It's a little bit of a high wire act, said Bill McCamley, Cabinet Secretary of the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions, because there's so much pressure to get money out. The New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions, doesn't that just sound like a made-up organization just to waste money through, just to hire people for the sake of hiring people? PUA fraud. Most of the theft has focused on the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, a temporary program that was created by the Federal CARES Act in March. It offers unemployment benefits to workers who don't ordinarily qualify, like the self-employed, gig workers, freelancers, contractors, and part-timers. Con artists are attracted to a potentially hefty payday, perhaps more than $10,000 or $20,000 per fraudulent claim, and lacks security measures initially put in place to rush money to ailing Americans. Not only are they evil thieves, they're hurting people who need this money in their pocket right now, intensely. And that's what I was alluding to at the onset of the video, the pork. The pork in every package that comes along. Billions upon billions of taxpayer dollars being sent overseas to our supposed friends. Billions in fraud, billions in waste, billions probably in fraud by our own individuals and government. Maybe I'm not making any accusations. Obviously, I don't have any evidence of that, but so much money is wasted. So much taxpayer money is just poof, gone. What happens to it? All right, that's my rant. That's all I got to say. By early November, at least $36 billion of the $360 billion in CARES Act unemployment benefits was lost to improper payments. That's 10%, mostly from fraud, according to a conservative estimate from the Office of the Inspector General for the Department of Labor. So that's a conservative estimate. Investigations related to the unemployment benefits account for 70% of the watchdog's caseload, nearly 6 times the level before the pandemic. This is the largest fraud attack on the U.S. ever, period, said Blake Hall, founder and chief executive of ID.me, which offers an identity verification service to more than a dozen state employment agencies. And it's not even close. Largest fraud attack on the U.S. ever, period. I would argue that there are certain things that have happened recently that perhaps would challenge for that largest fraud ever. One thing specifically that I'm thinking of, no, not what you're thinking of, but maybe, but the manner in which Politicians are able to enrich themselves, loved ones, relatives, family members. Let me just move on with that. I think that's kind of fraud myself, those criminals. But fraudulent claims for benefits can account for roughly 35 to 40% of new applications in some states, with generous weekly payouts, Hall said. International organized crime rings from countries like China, Ghana, Nigeria, and Russia account for most attacks. He said, nah, come on, man. You're just signaling those countries out. Those are upstanding countries. They would never do us harm. Come on. Their fraud can take many forms. The most common is identity theft, whereby criminals steal personal data to file a claim in someone else's name, Hall said. In some similar scams, attackers convince victims to verify their identity to get a job or win a prize. The U.S. government has issued benefit recipients an extra $600 a week on top of standard pay for 4 months through July, and then $300 a week for 6 weeks. Applicants could backdate claims to get the full run of those stipends. PUA applicants could also self-certify their qualifications to receive aid, in contrast with the more rigorous checks and balances states place on traditional aid. Those policies were coupled with state agencies hobbled by lack of resources to handle historic demand for jobless benefits. And remember, when the first package was first passed, it had a component for small business. And you had businesses that were able to, maybe I shouldn't say for small business, but for businesses in general. And you had certain businesses that were able to, it was the PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. And companies, large companies headed by rich individuals, famous individuals, were able to get PPP loans when that money was intended for more like smaller, mid-sized, maybe mom and pop shops. So fraud was there as well. I would say fraud, maybe I shouldn't say fraud in that sense, but the money didn't go where it was supposed to go. And then you had these businesses getting called out for taking on these loans when they had a ton of money. A couple of those that come to mind, I believe it was the Lakers that were able to get some form of PPP. I had read Tom Brady's company, I believe he calls it TB12, had received some money in PPP as well. And also companies that have direct involvement with Gavin Newsom. Maybe I shouldn't say direct now because he supposedly has divested from that, or it's in a blind trust, but companies that he has some form of stake in, again, divested to my understanding, but those companies received loans as well in the millions of dollars. And I had also heard that that restaurant chain, Chinese Laundry, where he was eating, that they received some money through PPP or through some other program. Now, I'm not exactly sure which program. These are things I've heard, though. If I'm wrong on any of that stuff, definitely fact check me on those. I never profess to know everything, but if I get something wrong, I definitely want to know about it, and I don't want to put false information out there. But those are things that I believe I have read. And as I go through and edit the video, I'll definitely look for those stories and link them above so you can see what I'm talking about. States began taking steps to cut fraud even before the recent relief package passed Congress in December. New Mexico, for example, instituted a 5-day waiting period before issuing money to check if an applicant's bank account was connected to known criminal enterprises. According to McCamley, who heads the state unemployment agency, it auto-locked claims with suspicious activity. These efforts to cut fraud have slowed the benefits to some workers, though, he said, not only are they evil thieves, they're hurting the people who need this money in their pockets right now, intensely. McCamley said of the criminals. That was the quote we just saw above. All right, just a little bit more. We're almost through this. Some fear new federal rules applied to the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, while helpful to fight fraud, may further delay assistance for the self-employed and others. States may experience delays at first as they make necessary tweaks to their systems, according to a Labor Department spokesperson. The agency is offering funding to support these efforts, and states may request more. In addition to $100 million states received in August to fight unemployment fraud, according to the official. Current recipients will have to submit documents to verify employment, perhaps tax forms or pay stubs, within a 90-day time frame offered by the state. Applicants after January 31st would have 30 days. Whoa, whoa. Tax forms and pay stubs, watch out. Took them a while to figure that out, huh? This requirement is a necessary check to help address fraud and ensure program integrity, according to the Labor Department spokesperson, who said states are accustomed to reviewing documents submitted by applicants when processing benefits. In December, more than 8 million people were receiving benefits through the PUA program, which has been extended through mid-March. By the end of January, states must also put identity verification procedures in place to require workers to certify their specific COVID-related reason for needing assistance on a weekly basis. Workers will also only be able to backdate claims to the beginning of December instead of the spring, substantially reducing the overall payout. It's a lot to put on the states in a short period of time, Andrew Stetner, a senior fellow at the Century Foundation, said. Are they going to have the capacity to implement these provisions in a way that won't interrupt people's benefits? Workers may also make mistakes during the application process, like sending in the wrong forms or answering the new certification questions incorrectly, and further impede aid, Stetner said. All right, so that's the article right there. Pretty short, pretty dry, pretty boring, I know, but just some interesting information, just some FUI, right? For all of those individuals who want to continue to grow government, there's a million stories out there like this where money just vanishes. Look no further than the high-speed rail system that was supposed to be being built here in California under Jerry Brown first. He was the governor prior to Gavin Newsom, and then under Gavin Newsom. Fortunately, he put a stop to that, but only after billions were wasted. So for those of you who want to continue to grow government and want Big Daddy government to take care of you, just remember, that money comes from somewhere, and it's you. So thanks for watching, everybody. Be well. A government that can't control its expenditures, can't control fraud. Who knew?